Alrighty, folks, welcome to the November 25th Correlations Group meeting. It's not an official tag meeting or anything, so we're not going to be doing roll calls for the groups, but I will open up the floor for members of the tags and the public to introduce themselves if they wish. So go ahead and raise hands and we can kick it off. Ben, you have your hand up.
Hi, thanks, Dustin. Ben Omura, SBCC council member representing mechanical engineers and MVP tag chair. Thank you. And I guess quick note, I do need to drop off about 10 today,
Okay,
but I might be able to come back towards the end of the meeting. Thanks.
gotcha. All right, anybody else that wishes to introduce themselves?
I'll just speak up. Roger Herringa, SPCC member on both IFC and IBC tags. And I also may need to leave at 10. I know I need to leave at 10:30. So.
All right, thank you.
And-
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Toy Jeter. I'm sorry, I was a couple of minutes late. That was it.
And boy. Anybody else wish to introduce themselves?
Yeah, this is Quinn here. I just got on.
Thank you, Quinn. Patrick.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
All right, last call for introductions here from tag members or the public.
This is Ricky Campbell. I am my IFC tag. I represent manufacturing.
Really quickly, Dustin.
Oh, gotcha, Brett.
And then Ken Nelson, I am the ventilation manufacturer for Panasonic.
All righty, any others wishing to introduce themselves? All right, seeing no hands, we will commence the agenda here. For agenda item number 2, we have one that we heard at the last time we met with this group. It's proposal number 091. We were viewing revision number 2, and the group was going to break out and do some work in between the meetings here. And I was expecting a revision 3, but I believe that there's probably some hurdles getting it out there, and so I don't have a revision 3 document to share. Speaking with Ken this morning, who's the proponent on, or the main proponent on this one, it sounds like the main body of work they were trying to do on this one was to come up with a hydraulic calculations or a bucket test. And he suggested maybe adding when required by the code official, and that'll give the fire code official the option of requiring the test or calculations. And so in the interest of trying to keep this one moving, since I don't have an updated document, I'll bring up the revision 2 and open it up for conversation, and we'll see where we get to on that one. So give me just one moment and I'll pop that open. All right. So I do know there's some members of the folks that we're gonna work on this in between here. I guess I'd start with maybe Ricky. I've seen you be a little bit more vocal on this one. Talk about the bucket test or calculations. Is there anything to Ken's suggestion as far as adding where required by the fire code official in here? Did you see that one working for us?
Yeah, I'm in favor of that, as long as the group is. The whole issue with it is a lot of the residential water supplies. Yes, I understand they're calculated, and when it comes down to it, you know, the information given to the customers or the builders at the time usually is inadequate. And I really believe a bucket test would be the answer if you're doing a flow through or a standalone system. If that wasn't the case, if those weren't acceptable, then I would say a tank and pump would be optimal for that. But I'm okay with where required by fire code official.
I got a mouse over here with a dead battery. I keep grabbing it and trying to move around. Where would we put that into this proposal? Is it just for the? I guess I'm not as familiar with this one as I should be for adding that in here. Would it be just in these 903 sections up here at the top?
Yeah, I'm not sure where we would put it. What would be the best spot to put?
I would say
I'm
the best spot to put it would be in the modifying the 903.3.1.3.
Which is
Would
a
be a
section
new
not included in
section
this
added, yeah.
document. Okay, so 903.1. Can you repeat that one for me, Russell?
903.3.1.3.
3. So 903.3.1.3. Let me pop that one up. Russell, do you have more comment while I pop open some stuff here?
Yeah, I disagree with the calculations being only being optional for the AHJ to require. If it's going to be per 13D, it should require the calculations per 13D. The bucket test could be dependent on the AHJ. Although if, like Ricky said, if it's not a pump and tank, it really should be a bucket test because we get bad information on the meters all the time and it ends up not working.
Gotcha. So having like a graduated, not I guess a cylinder is probably not what we're talking about, but have a bucket test so you can get a known flow rate with a known quantity is instead of relying on the meters is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Hoyt.
Yeah, just testing. Can you hear me okay, Dustin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. One thing I think it should be like on the bucket test and things like that. All those things that they're talking about, I believe that should be in the under the fire code. I'm not sure it should be actually put in with the IBC stuff because that's where the bucket test and all that stuff is done through the fire guys, and it's not usually an IBC inspection item. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's been my experience. So if you add it in there, I'm not sure you should put it in the IBC. It should just be in the IFC.
Okay. So I'm looking at 903.3.1.3, which here I'll pull over to the screen for you guys. Sorry, clicked on the wrong one. 903.3.1.3. So are we saying adding in the bucket test or calculations as required by the fire official into this section, and how would we see it necessarily threading in there?
Dustin, this is Sean Shepard.
Go ahead.
So the section for the bucket test is actually driven through state licensing on this, and state licensing grants the authority having jurisdiction the choice of whether to do this or not. If you do this, I don't know if I would do it as a single paragraph or to amend 313. It would probably be a secondary paragraph for that.
So like a subsection for in there?
Yeah, possibly, but it needs to be done by the needs to be done as fire when requested by the fire code official. 13D already has 4, almost 5 different methods to do this, which only one of them is hydraulic calculations. So we need to actually give that authority, back to the HJ.
Okay.
This is Jeff Shapiro. I'm on a browser, so I don't have a hand raise feature, but I would like to comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Jeff Shapiro. I'm a fire protection engineer. I am executive director of the IRC Fire Sprinkler Coalition, that was the organization that moved residential sprinklers into the IRC, and I've been involved in the residential sprinkler issue for decades. I will just speak in general opposition to adding anything here requiring a bucket test for two reasons. Number one, we're not requiring that in the code for any other 13D system. And the only change being proposed here is for buildings going to 4 stories. So to go back and start talking about bucket tests under 903.3, where you're going to impact potentially all 13D systems, is definitely not within the scope of what we're talking about, of just adding an allowance to go to a 4th story. Secondly, if you're going to do the bucket test, you don't need to do hydraulics, because the bucket tests basically prove out a prescriptive design method, such as what's allowed in the IRC for P2904 and 13D. In P2904, we wrote that in a way that you simply measure developed pipe length, and it is an acceptable method of proving hydraulics. In that case, you don't even have to do plans. So I think there are cases where if you don't want to do plans and you want to do a design install in the field and not do hydraulics, you prove it with a bucket test and you're done, and the bucket test is warranted. But to put that on top of all of the other requirements here, it is not inexpensive. It requires an additional time for the jurisdiction to be on site to meet with a contractor. The contractor needs to have the equipment and staff there. You're potentially adding hundreds of dollars to the cost of an installation when you've got to dispatch one of the installer's crews out there, hook all this up and prove it. So it's not inconsequential, and it certainly is contrary to the intent of all this, which is to try to get fire sprinklers into the most cost-effective manner. I have some other comments regarding what I think are some defects in the code change proposal that need to be fixed. But with respect to the bucket test, I'm opposed to it in general unless it's incorporated in the code in a way that it's an alternative to all the other design features. But it absolutely is not something you need to be adding to 903 when we're only talking about adding the additional story here. Also point out that 13 or P2904 systems or 13D under the IRC can do 3 stories plus a habitable attic, and we're not calling for a bucket test there. So you're really penalizing the systems that are done in accordance with the IBC.
Gotcha. Jeff, you said you had some other comments on other portions of this proposal?
Yeah, if you go back to the story table, and as I think I mentioned to this group, I've mentioned other groups in Washington, I have a proposal to do something similar to this that accomplishes the same end into the IBC for the upcoming cycle. It would have been heard this year, but general got moved to Group B. So that proposal is in. But one of the things that I note here is if you go to R3, you're adding that new footnote under 13D. It should be moved over, I think, to the 3-story lines instead of putting it over on the heading. And then under R2, the 13DK, if you look, you're letting 13D systems go to 4 stories, but 13R and 13 systems are limited to 3. That makes absolutely no sense. So all of those 3s need to become 4s because you don't want to give more height allowance to 13D. I will point out that in my proposal, I did not include R2s. I only did R3s in the national code. I'm a little concerned that R2 might be too generous for this, but that was Ken's proposal. But in no case should you be allowing a 13D protected building to be higher than 13R or 13.
Gotcha.
So yeah, to that.
Go ahead.
So to that point, the 3 under the 13R and the 13 for R2, that would need to be limited to the same footnote exclusions so that you're not just changing every R2 with a 13R to 4 stories. It would be
Yeah, I mean,
need to be limited to townhomes.
I will say in general, I don't know where his justification is for doing this for apartment buildings. You know, townhouses are kind of a unique element. And I guess in the footnote, he's calling out only a townhouse and dwelling unit is equipped. But when you put it in the table, the way that it is with a whole line for 13D, it implies otherwise. So, you know, I think the better way to do that might be to deal with it as a footnote under 13R, that you can reduce the protection to 13D for townhouses that are classified as R2. You know, Micah and I have been having a discussion over whether it actually is R2 or R3. I'm of the opinion the townhouse is going to be an R3, even if it's a rental, unless they're reducing the firewalls. But I just really didn't, you know, I told Ken I didn't like his execution under the R2 line. But if you're going to do that, I really don't think you want to add 13D across the board here. You're really, the only change that it has an impact on, because everything is 4 stories anyway, is except the 5B line. So, I mean, to me, the better execution would be under 13R, where it's got 3 stories for 5B. Just put a footnote that for R2, for townhouse buildings that are, or townhouses that are classified as R2, you're permitted to go to 4 stories with a 13R or a 13D, and then you'd have to add that same footnote under the S so that you don't make it more restrictive for 13 systems than the others. Sorry to complicate things. I had understood there was going to be some discussion on this last week after the previous call, but I never got an invite to that. This is the only one I saw with an invite.
I'm not aware that anything actually got together on that, but it's, you know, it is what it is. Dave?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, Jeff, thank you very much. I was in opposition to this proposal last week, and I was looking forward to the language, and I think Jeff's explanations clarified my concerns regarding this. I really don't like that 13D and the R2 in the table. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's going to create more confusion than anything. And I think I was hoping that the group would have gotten together and incorporated some of Jeff's comments into a proposal that I would support.
So, what I think I'm hearing is that this one isn't garnering a lot of support, and Ken's not here to maybe argue for this one. But what I'm hearing is that this one needs some more work before it should go through at the fire tag or at the building tag. As we're looking at this here, is it mainly the tables that are the issue? I mean, so we've got the calculation / bucket test topic, and then we've got, you know, the 13D as a blanket within R2, and maybe the tables could get edited a little bit to more accurately, or I guess to better provide for what we're trying to do here. Does this group see this as needing more work with the proponent before they would want to make a recommendation to both the IBC and IFC tags for adoption? And go ahead and speak up if you don't have the hand raised.
This is Dave Kokot. I believe it needs more work.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd have a hard time. I need to see what the language looks like before I can support it.
I think it's fixable. I just don't know whether you're able to edit anything on screen.
Well,
to me,
I
as I said,
can.
I don't think the bucket test is an issue. I would just fix the table.
Okay. So I mean, I can, I just am hesitant to start modifying this without Ken being here present, since this is his proposal. The other issue we're working up against is a ticking time clock to try to get these done by a certain date. I without speaking to Ken, I know he's at a doctor's appointment this morning and unavailable. You know, I want to try to avoid, you know, having maybe more than one correlation meeting after this. I could see bringing one more correlation group back. But it would have to be sometime early next week, and I don't know if we would have the bandwidth to modify outside of that. So I guess, how about this? We look at making some changes to the table here. I can make modifications. I'm not the expert at fire sprinklers. So I would need just a little bit of guidance from the folks here to help me do that. But I'm hearing that the R2 13D line needs either to be removed and made as a footnote into the 13R line for type 5B. And is there anything in the R3 line of this table that needs to be updated? Like I think the footnote J needs to be moved over to the 3 stories lines as well. Is that what I think I heard?
Do you have other stuff you're going to be working on in this meeting for the next 15 or 20 minutes?
Yeah, we can definitely table this one till a little bit later if you want. I can send this out, or Jeff, do you have this in an email by chance?
You know, I don't think he ever gave me exactly what was submitted. If he did, it was a long time ago. But if you have the ability to shoot this to me in an email, I'll tinker with it, send it back to you with the changes, and that way we don't have to spend time tinkering with it with a group. You know, Ken's been working with me. I feel like I understand what he wants to accomplish, and hopefully I can fix it.
Okay, let me get this out. I'm going to send it to everybody who is working on this.
Real quick,
Go
one
ahead.
thing.
Wait.
I had the same thing, and what Jeff has. I mean, I look at like R3s, even the R3s, you know, you go 13R, you go to 4 stories, you have a full sprinkler system. I mean, why would anyone ever do a full sprinkler system for an R3 in a type 5 ever? I have a hard time. I haven't seen the rationale why it should be approved, you know, compared to a full, you know, sprinkler system. That's what I'm hoping from the fire guys to give more. Maybe Jeff knows, but and then the same thing that Jeff was. It seems strange to me that you would never do a full sprinkler system or in any type 5 building ever, based on the way I read this. I mean, unless
Well, you wouldn't be required to, Hoyt. That's the point. There may be some people that for insurance purposes or other reasons might choose to exceed the minimum code.
But you can always do that. So I think it's confusing.
Right. Look at the whole table is structured in a way where you can pick the type of 13R or 13D or 13 system. You can't put an NA in here because it is applicable and you are allowed to do so. This table was redone. Everything with sprinklers used to be a footnote, and years ago it was redone to break these all out to theoretically simplify the table. And to not include those others and essentially disallow them is contrary to the way the table was structured. So this is the way the IBC chose to do it. And again, the only thing we're desiring to do is change the 3 to a 4 because the IBC is essentially punishing buildings in a way that the IRC allows with habitable attics. And I can give you the justification statement.
No, I understand, Jeff. I know that. So basically, when you rework it, you're going to be changing an R2 S13R. You're going to change that 3 to a 4 also, right? Or that's kind of the idea, right?
Actually, what I'm going to do, and this comes from a discussion, I don't think Micah is on the call, but Micah and I have a disagreement on whether a townhouse building under the IBC is an R2 or an R3. So my thought is to add a footnote after R2 to say for townhouses, CR3. And in the R3 line, I'm going to change the 13D for 5A and 5B to 4 stories. That's what I'm going to send back to you so that you have something in writing. And I'm going to delete the 13D line from R2 because I think that's misleading.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's consistent with what Ken and others want. I mean, I've been in discussions with them, and Part of this came out of my discussion with Ken that hey, I've already done this for the IBC, but he wants to get Washington to do it in Washington sooner. I didn't amend any of the Chapter 9 stuff because I don't think it's necessary, frankly. But if he wants to do that, it's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. I just don't think it's necessary.
Jeff, this is Sean Shepard. The reason we're having this conversation is because of me. Okay.
Okay.
In Seattle, and I found out there are other jurisdictions around us, because the code actually calls out a specific system type within the building code, that is where we run into the problem where a D should be there, but an R, or in some instances, a 13 system has been required. Trying to get back to the intent that a D can serve these taller structures. So
right. So you're in support of what I'm trying to accomplish?
I am, because yes,
Okay.
within the city, the R2 designation, and in jurisdictions that are around us that have followed suit, yes, the R2 designation causes most of the concern and problems.
So if I footnote R2 and say for townhouses, go to R3, does that work for you?
That does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I saw Micah gave me a very detailed response on his position versus mine. Frankly, I don't know that it matters. If I just refer you to the R3 line, it solves the problem and we don't have to debate the classification anymore.
Yeah, the issue comes down to is we leave the IRC, we find ourselves in the IBC, and now suddenly we deal with two different tables that give us a different criteria, and we're left up to that occupancy classification. The only thing I would like you to consider was that the issue of a townhouse unit versus a townhouse. That's the only nuance that I think that might be applicable here.
Yeah, so Micah apparently didn't do his homework. I wrote that change. It was my change to the IRC and the correlating change to the IBC. So I'm very familiar with it. I did it. It was mine. I think in the IBC, we simply need to refer to townhouses. Under R2, it's the townhouse, which is the building, not the individual townhouse units that are in it. So for the townhouse building, the whole building has to be sprinklered, and you're going to sprinkler it as required for the R3 townhouse units. That's my interpretation of my text in the code. So I know sometimes people read things differently in the code, but when you have the author at hand, you know what the intent was.
Gotcha. Russell, do you prefer Chris or Russell?
Either one's fine.
Okay.
So to Hoyt's point of why would anyone do a 13R 13 and an R3 if we go to 4 stories with the 13D, the 13R and the 13 qualify for exceptions to the fire rating and continuous firewalls in Chapter 7, where 13D does not.
Ricky.
Yeah, I just kind of want to make a I'm in favor of what Jeff's talking about. I do want to give some backstory why. I'll just try to keep it short. When I was working in the field, I worked at McKinstry Fire Protection, and Alaska Airlines had owned 2 strips of townhomes that they would keep for their pilots and stewardesses to lay over. And of course, vagrants got in there. And these buildings were sprinkled by a 13R. So the first thing they do is when the vagrants get in there, of course, the pilots and stewardesses don't want nothing to do with the building at that point in time. So the first thing they do is kill the power and never put any thought into the sprinkler system inside the building. That being said, it froze and I had to do a complete rebuild of 2 6 apartment, townhomes. So I mean, I really believe if you got these townhomes and you got some that go unoccupied and it's being protected by a 13R system, who's going to keep the heat on in those other areas as those vacant townhomes are there? You know what I mean? These systems have to be maintained at 40 degrees, or they have to drain them and whatnot to protect it from the freeze. That being said, a lot of contractors, a lot of AHJs in Washington State do require a bucket test. This is kind of shifting gears again. A lot of them fail, and a lot of it's because of that water meter out front. So I'm in favor of what Jeff's, getting at. And the whole reason why I was a big proponent of a bucket test is just that you got your static water pressure. What's key is that flowing water pressure. Do we have enough flowing water pressure to get that adequate pressure at the top? And the only way, if they design it, I would believe that, it'd have to be that flowing pressure. So I just kind of want to throw in there why I think it's important that each individual townhome be separate, because not every townhome is going to be occupied at the point, of maintaining that 40 degrees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, so those aren't actually topics of discussion with regard to the 4 stories or not, but I'll just comment on a couple things. One, if you have a vacant building, the plumbing is just at risk of freezing as the sprinklers, so you have to deal with the plumbing and the sprinklers. 2, if you're dealing with an R2 townhouse building, you're going to reduce the fire separation walls to 1 hour, and it's treated as multiple dwelling units within a single building as opposed to a true townhouse as we would normally look at them. It's just an apartment building with vertical units inside, and we don't require individual shutoff valves in those cases because it's a single sprinkler system to the full building. So the R3 style, you typically would have individual shutoff valves for each unit, although it's not mandatory under the code. You can have a common system, but typically you will have a shutoff valve for each unit. With regard to the bucket test, as I said, I love the bucket test in lieu of having to do hydraulic calculations and plans. I would love to have a conversation with Washington that allows basically a field design install using what we call the express method. And you don't have to do any of the background. You don't have to do a plan submittal. The inspector comes and makes sure the sprinkler is located in the right place. You pass a bucket test, you're done. But to add the bucket test on top of all the other stuff as a proof of hydraulics, to me, is really excessive and unnecessarily raises the cost. And with regard to the meter, you're supposed to calculate that in. So if they don't, shame on the designer who did that in the first place. But we have, in the IRC, we have standard meter deductions that are pretty aggressive in terms of making sure that you subtract enough pressure loss across the meter. But unfortunately, it sounds like at this point, we're too late in the process to even look at something like that for this cycle.
Russell?
Yeah, the main reason that Ricky and I have been bringing up the bucket test is because on the meters we've been burned where they give us the wrong information or they install the wrong meter, and then you go out and do the bucket test and it doesn't work. So even if you did calc it with the right meter flow characteristics, it just doesn't work. And there's a Washington home fire sprinkler best practice meeting where we've talked about this a lot, which I'd like to get Jeff that information because it'd be great to have him at those meetings to discuss this the method he's talking about of doing it without plans and calcs.
Gotcha. All right.
So for now, can I just get a copy of this? I'll doctor it up and send it back during the call.
Yeah, Jeff, you should have this in your inbox now. You should I sent it out here at the 9:24. Let me just double check that I don't have anything waiting in my outbox.
Yep, I see it just popped in. So you're going to go on to other things. Let me play with this. I'll email it back to you and then I'll tune back in. It shouldn't take me more than 15 minutes.
Okay, so with that one, we're gonna table 091 revision 2 until we get back from Jeff with some revisions. I guess the plan on that one will be to review the revisions, hopefully make a recommendation, and then before that runs back to the fire tag and IBC tag, I'd like Ken to put his blessing on it as well. So I'll send that out to him, and we'll keep everybody tuned on what the outcome is for that one. So we'll table for now 091.
Dustin, this is Sean Shepherd. I expect Ken will have some time to be available this week.
Okay. All right. So with that one, let me close down 091 and minimize that. So our next one is number 117. This one again we looked at last week to I don't have a good note on what is actually needed to be done on number 117. I just have that it needed to come back with a revision in here. So and this is another Ken Brulette proposal. Is there anybody who wants to comment on this one before we move forward? I was probably going to try to give Ken one more chance to get a revision in on this one, but I don't recall what the conversation was last week on this one. Just that I needed a revision 2 to bring back today, and I didn't get that one.
Dustin, this is Sean Shepherd. Ken did not touch base with me on this one.
Okay. All right, if there's no comments on this one, we'll move beyond this one and get this one back out to Ken for some work on this. All righty, closing down 117. We have 115 revision 1 here. This is one that we didn't bring up in the original correlations group. I missed it in my accounting. And so this one is, I believe, for the most part, recommended for adoption by the 2 individual tags. This one touches on the building code and the mechanical code, and I just want to open it up for conversation at this point. I believe we're, for the most part, on the home stretch with this particular proposal. Does anybody have comments on this particular proposal?
Sean Shepherd.
Sean, go ahead.
Does anybody recall if this one dealt with buildings that were ventilation air would have to be still maintained for buildings that had relocation and staged evacuation? Because how this is written is universal full building.
And
I thought it was intended full building, or that's how I read it.
So if you have relocation as part of the evacuation strategy or staged evacuation that are going to go from one portion of the building and actually maintain in another portion of the building, they would still need to have ventilation air. And I don't see that being addressed in here.
It's not. I don't remember that being an issue talked about, so I would have to study that more myself. It's a good question.
So on this one, I show it as having a impact on IMC section 607.2.3. Oh, I don't see it written in here. Is 717.2.3 the same language in the mechanical code? I'm trying to pull that up right now and take a peek. Ben?
Yeah, I believe it is, Dustin, but yeah, feel free to check. But I believe the intent of the proposed change is to provide additional clarification on requirements for static dampers. So these are dampers that are meant to operate when there's not airflow in the system. So where the whatever ventilation device or air moving device has already been shut down by one of the listed items in the code change proposal.
Okay.
And what was the fire tag? Some of the people in the fire, what's, I mean, because a lot of this is BNF, but a lot of times I like to hear what the fire guys say about these static dampers when they're putting these things in here. What's their opinion on, or what was their view on that when they had their meeting on it, or did they?
Well, this one's, I guess, not written so that it touches the fire code. So the fire guys haven't had an opportunity to comment on this particular proposal, but there are some fire guys here today, and I'd welcome their input.
Yeah, this is Lance Dahl. I really don't have any criticism to this at all. It is something that we need to deal with and track. I'm just not sure how we're going to wrap our hands around it on the fire side of the house for sure.
Gotcha.
The one thing when it says the parentheses BNF, you know, that's why I always like to get the input from
Yeah.
the fire group to see what they think. Because I hate making a building code change without at least some input from fire people. I also talked to Chris about this, Chris Seaman in our department, but it's good to hear from other people.
Quinn?
I could be wrong on this, but I was busy looking at the code while the speaker was asking the question about shutting down the ventilation. But the way I'm reading it is that this is only for systems where if you read the charging language, shall be installed only in heating, ventilation, blah, 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 that are automatically shut down in the event of a fire. So it's only in those systems. So if if the refuge area doesn't have those systems, then it doesn't apply.
Okay, Quinn, I understand that. But if I'm relocating somebody from the 9th floor down to the 6th floor, because we're not going to have them relocate out of the building, the 6th floor will still have ventilation.
But would that ventilation be required to be shut down? That's my question. Right? If that system down on that 6th floor, if it's an area of refuge, would it be required to have a shutdown system?
It's not an issue of an area of refuge. Okay, this is area of refuge, and whether you're going to relocate somebody in the building are two different subject matters. So you're just telling somebody to relocate by the evacuation message to another area of the building, but not to evacuate. Or in the concept that we have in Seattle, we have occupation evacuation elevators that aren't taking you down to the 1st floor. So if those systems are designed as a common system, of which we see a lot, then those areas would be shut down. So from this paragraph alone, we'd have to separate those systems out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was just trying to point out that section to make sure it's clear. Thanks, Sean.
I totally get that. It's just, this is an issue that I do not think has, it has impacts to the fire code and how we design the fire alarm systems on that. Doesn't appear to be that those were incorporated or even addressed. I believe this is also might be associated to the static dampers in ERV systems and dwelling units, but I'm not convinced on that.
Alrighty, Russell, I saw your hand up.
Sean answered my question.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So with this one, it looks like the sections, I made a change here that it's also IMC section 607.2.3 while people were conversing. I did verify that the language is the same in both of those sections, and so everything shown in red below the black text is additive language as compared to the model code. Is there issue with this proposal going back to the IMC and the IBC, or should this go to the fire tag for a little bit more input there? Ben, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. And I just wanted to clarify kind of what our goal is here for this correlation meeting. My understanding is we're trying to make sure that there's consistency across the codes, and if there are additional discussion items that we're taking them back to the tags or moving it forward to have public comment and review in CR 102.
Correct.
So yeah, and I believe on the mechanical tag, we already reviewed this one, found it to be recommended to move forward. But if it's not been, that review hasn't been completed on the fire code tag side, then yeah, I would recommend having additional discussion there.
Okay. Anybody here, or Russell, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I have another question about the intent of this. So is this intended to shut down any unit that has a fire damper, regardless of how much CFM it's moving? So basically anything with a fire damper would have to be connected to the fire alarm system to shut down? Or am I misunderstanding this?
Well, I wish that Eric was here. Ben, do you recall from the conversation at the mechanical tag, what the intent there was?
I mean, I believe the intent is to really clarify what the shutdown options are for the system when it relates to these static dampers, which are only rated to operate when there is no airflow in the system. So there's a different class of dampers for dynamic dampers, which I'm sure most of the folks here are aware, but yeah, it's identifying what means of shutdown are available for the system in those cases for these particular dampers.
Ben, this is Sean Shepard. Was this the issue revolving around the ceiling radiation dampers?
Correct. Yeah, so there's like for ceiling radiation dampers, there's only like one manufacturer that makes like a dynamic rated ceiling radiation damper. So in most cases, the ceiling radiation damper would be a static damper. So identifying what means of shutdown would be available to use in conjunction with those dampers was the goal of this clarification, is my understanding.
I will say there are impacts in relating the in interfacing the dampers with fire alarm systems that I don't feel are well addressed in this change, because a lot of systems will not allow that interfacing to occur.
And I guess my understanding is like either one of the 5 options is available. So the project could go with like the duct heat detection or another item that doesn't require an interface.
I understand that, but the variety of where you can find ceiling radiation dampers will be within buildings that won't have all these capabilities.
Yeah, I would say it would be a good idea to have the fire tag review it if it's going to impact fire alarm.
Okay. Fire folks who are on the call today, are we, is there any issues identified today by the reading? We can definitely take this to the fire tag, but I'm not sure if we'll have the time to bring it back to a correlations group to talk further on it. So I would hope maybe if we got some of the fire folks here today that we could maybe kind of cover that basis. Roger?
Yeah, so I was looking back and I understand from Ben that the mechanical tag approved it for to move it along to CR 102. And I'm also looking in the building code tag also approved it to move it along for CR 102. I certainly would love to have input from the fire tag, although there is still the option if this went through both went into the CR 102 and there was public comment that it needed to be reworked or was not correct, it can either be, number one, voted down after CR 102, after the public comment. And there also is some ability to change that yet. I mean, the intent is, we know the intent, but if we needed to make some changes so that it would be approved for the mechanical or the fire code, I believe that that still could happen in the CR 102 process, in my opinion anyway. So if we could just get input from the fire code tag, I don't know that we would have to come back through a correlation again, Dustin.
Yeah, we don't necessarily, if they don't make any changes to it, I guess if they were, you know,
Yeah.
up in arms and made a bunch of changes, we'd have a little bit of a hurdle at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Quinn.
Yeah, so just being on the fire tag, I would say I would agree with Roger that I'm okay with this moving forward. I do hear what Sean is saying. Like at face value, the charging language already requires, allows this to happen. The red text is just how it happens, right? So the black text is when and where, black, and then the red is how. But with that said, I do hear Sean's concern about the downstream effect of other systems, and I'm not a expert on those. But at the same time, though, we are only talking about CR 102, where there are going to be public comments available. So I'm okay with moving this forward.
Gotcha.
The
So-
same for myself, Lance.
Okay. So how about we move forward in the vein that this will be, we've already got the preliminary approvals from the IBC and IMC. We'll take it as a courtesy to the IFC at their next meeting just for a double check. And if there's issues, we can take note of them and add them to our comment documents. And but we'll plan on moving this one forward as of today with the language that we see here on screen. Does that sound like a plan for everybody? Everybody? All right.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Then we will be done with 115, revision 1. Roger, you have your hand?
Dustin, if I can just comment a little bit on process.
Uh-huh.
I have been sitting in on the IBC tag and the IFC tag. Almost everything that we've moved along has been unanimous. There is still, our process allows, if there was only a majority, so if there was a dissenting opinion about one particular proposal, but the majority of the tag approved it, that still would move along to the full state building code council. The council would contemplate the minority opinion just to decide whether to move it along into CR 102, and then there would be public comment. And so it does not have to be, we don't need to have unanimous approval on these. If there is concern, if there are concerns and there is a minority opinion, I think that is great. And we need to, move that along, bring that along with the proposal. But, I don't think that we have to have everything 100% and unanimous approval of every proposal in order to move it along on the process. We'll be able to make any corrections we need later down the line if needed. So
That's correct. All righty. Wrapping with 115. That brings up our last one that's on the agenda. I have one more that Roger brought up first thing this morning that we talked about at the building code tag. We'll bring up after this next one. Number 124 is not actually titled referenced codes, but that is what do I got going on here? I opened up too much stuff. All right, there's 124. So with proposal number 124, the topic of concern here is the use of the Washington State Energy Code across the code. And we're talking, I guess, Washington State Building Code, Washington State Fire Code, all the Washington custom codes, should they be referenced everywhere that the codes are referenced in the code books, which would be a major undertake as far as making the modifications to show in WAC, and also then to go do word searches within the documents to change across all the codes. Should a change like this be indicated in chapter 1, or should it be indicated in the preface of the code? And so just bringing it to the group here to talk about when we are referencing our state codes across the code books, how should it be done? And I feel like the consensus that we've got so far is that it shouldn't be done in specific sections, because it's a lot of edits that need to be done and to be maintained. And so they were the more support, I believe, is in placing this in chapter 1 or in the preface text of the code. And Hoyt, you have your hand up, and then Quinn.
Yeah, it's always the way it's done in the past. It says the reference standards back there, and they just changed the International Energy Code, and you went down to the reference standards, and that was crossed out and said Washington State Energy Code, and that's always been acceptable in the past. Hasn't been a problem, you know. So it is. You could do it in chapter 1 if you want, which is another place to do it, but it's always been just kind of in the chapter 34 where the IECC was just changed to the WSEC. So, and I've never seen a problem with it yet. So, or I haven't had a problem in the past.
So in the past, Hoyt, just clarifying, you've seen all this done in just the reference standard section of the code textbook?
Yeah, it's basically what it says is it crossed off International Energy Code, Energy Conservation Code, and says it's replaced with Washington State Energy Code. That's it. And then it pretty much anywhere it referenced the IECC, you just had to go to the Washington State Energy Code.
Gotcha. Quinn?
My question is more about legal, because the WAC references the Energy Conservation Code and it doesn't spell out Washington State Energy Code. So from a legal standpoint, is changing it acceptable? Does that make sense? Because if you look at WAC 51-11, it still references the International Energy Conservation Code.
Let's pull it up. Oh, sorry, messing it up. So in 5111C, the International Energy Conservation Code, nobody has brought that particular point up before, Quinn.
Go to scope and general requirements, or C101, yeah. The code shall be known as the Washington State Energy Code.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm neutral on it. Mostly it's just illegal because the title itself, 51-11, if you go to the main title with the WAC, it doesn't say Washington State. It's still, if you go even back one more.
Yeah, but remember, titles are not really.
Well, it's by code, but by state law, that might be different. That's my question.
So let's see. So the title of the WAC is the adoption and amendment of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. In here, in the scope and general requirements, they name the code as the Washington State Energy Code. If we get back into, say, let's look at what the state building code is. We have 003, the International Building Code. So, I guess only in the energy codes are they renaming the title of the code to be the Washington State Energy Code in the WAC. So I guess as we go through and reference it based on what's in WAC, I wouldn't say it'd be appropriate to change it to Washington State Building Code across the codes, but maybe just for the energy code, it would be appropriate to reference the Washington State Energy Code. I'm kind of neutral in it. It's not something that's been a big point of contention in anything I've done in the past. And so, Shailesh?
Well, it looks like that this reference section is only showing which edition of the code was used to read the text more so. So until Washington adopt, it will be international code. Once the Washington is adopting this code, then it becomes a Washington State Energy Code becomes the reference. And in that case, it will be 2021 Washington State Energy, becomes the reference for requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So it is only for reference purpose that which code language, if the state has modified, to be followed. So I think it should not be a problem technically. It's a matter of which code we are referencing. And we are referencing Washington State Energy Code anyway for all the practical purpose.
Okay, Roger?
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to point out the exact language for 5150 and 5151 is the same. It is State Building Code Adoption and Amendment of the 2021 edition of the IBC. So it's exact same for the building code and the energy code. The title of the WAC is the same. It is addressed the same, but I think that, not being an attorney, but I am sure that attorneys have looked at this in the way that we are referring it as the Washington State Building Code. Very clearly, from a legal perspective, I'm 99% sure what we're doing is correct. And so calling it the Washington State Energy Code, commercial and residential, and doing it one time, I think makes sense to me. Whether it's chapter 34 or chapter 1, I would leave that to this group, but.
Krista?
You also have to look at the RCW, especially when you're talking about the Washington State Building Code. The RCW is very specific that the Washington State Building Code encompasses all of the codes referenced in 031. So by adding a reference to the Washington State Building Code, you're really muddying the waters.
So would it be most appropriate then, Krista, in your opinion, to refer to the Washington State Energy Code and then leave everything else as international codes outside of the energy codes?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Okay. Quinn, your hand was up.
I mean, I'm probably a minority on it because to me, it just feels like we're making a change for the sake of change. I mean, I don't think it's really needed, but it's a small opposition on it. Because like you said earlier, it's like we don't call it, we're not changing the rest of all the codes to say Washington State Building Code, Washington State Residential Code, Washington State Fire Code. We're only doing it for this one. I mean, I guess the question is, was there a need for it, or are we just making a change just for the sake of change?
I think for this one, it was identified by one of the tags in, I guess, the building code tag to look at that particular section to modify just to bring in the the text to bring in the Washington State Energy Code right there.
Dustin, it came out of the review trying to correlate the 2024 IBC with the state amendments. I mean, it was right from the very start of, hey, how are we referring this? Because it says, International Energy Code. So that's where the question came up, and the building code tag had the exact same conversation. Why do it? What is it really needed? And it's almost, as we sit here and talk about it, I mean, there are differences of opinions. I'm wondering if we almost ask Dirk or somebody, you know, we want to make sure that we are in proper legal standing and how we're referencing it. But I don't know, that would be my, I don't think anybody has a strong opinion one way or the other than to keep it as simple as possible, but we want to make sure we're doing it legally in the correct way. So maybe having Dirk or somebody from the Attorney General's office comment on it might be the best way to resolve it. In fact, I would go so far as if we're taking any motions, although we're not voting, is what I hear is there's not strong opinions one way or the other. We would refer it to the Attorney General's office for comment and go with that, you know, bring that back to the IBC tag of, you know, just let them decide what's the best way legally.
Okay. Brett?
Yes, as it relates to the associated discussion about, you know, where do we reference all the codes, whether it's in the reference standards or in chapter 101. I'm just doing a further review of 101, and that seems like an excellent place for all the kind of correlation of which codes govern in the state. I just was looking at 101 4.3 plumbing, and it's currently stated to be pointing at the International Plumbing Code rather than Uniform Plumbing Code. So I meant that's where we could make those correct correlations. Seems like as a practicing architect, a better place to state out the standards than in reference standards. Just a personal opinion as a practicing architect.
Gotcha. Quick question for Krista. Is this the first time that this topic has come up in the code cycle process?
No, that's why it's in the 007 section.
Okay.
It was determined that it was not worth the state amendments to go through and correct every instance of the plumbing code, the energy code, and all those other codes that are not adopted but are referenced in the code, the property maintenance code, etc. And to just say codes that are referenced that aren't adopted don't apply.
So, to my knowledge, the 3 locations we've talked about for these potential changes we're discussing here today have been the preface section, which would include the 007 language, the chapter 101, or in the reference standards. And Krista, is it accurate to say that the information has been there in the preface text of at least the custom codes that have gone out since 2018?
Yeah, I think we adopted that back probably 2006. I don't think it was there for the first edition that we adopted for the international codes, but it has been for subsequent editions. Okay. And the reference standard, if you just change the code titles in the reference standards, that doesn't get you anything but confusion. So I'm kind of against that, because that just, you go back and look for, is this particular standard referenced somewhere? And then you go back to look at that section. If you change those without changing the code section, it's broken. So.
And as far as, you know, one of the missions we have is to minimize, you know, modifications to code text as much as possible. If we kept it in the preface section, it would kind of stay with the status quo, and also, you know, I guess still be clear that that's what we are referencing when we're working within these, you know, code documents. I would, I guess, ask the group, since there's not a whole lot of it doesn't seem like everybody's very passionate about, you know, where this change should go, if it's even needed. Would this group be okay maybe recommending that we just maintain the 007 sections in the preface text of the code books as a method to reduce the changes we're making and kind of stick with what's been going on in the state so far?
So let me just make sure I understand that, Dustin, just so I'm clear, it's a long statement. Basically, what you're saying is not make this change in 1202.4 because we'd have to go throughout the whole code and do that in a whole bunch of places. You're just saying just up in the chapter 1 or whatever where we reference it, or back in the reference standards back in 34. That's it. Not doing, just basically not accepting this code. Basically, we're making a recommendation not to do this code change. Just keep it the way it is, right?
Right. So for this specific code change, yes, reject this code change proposal. But as the topic at hand, I'm proposing, if we wanted to put it in chapter 1, we would need to, modify this proposal to bring it back there. But I was
The
actually
only thing, Dustin, the
Go
only
ahead.
thing, jurisdictions around the state, that's one area, chapter 1, you can amend, right? I mean, that's okay. But if you put it back in chapter 34, where it gives all the reference standards, that's not amendable. You know what I'm saying? So.
I hear you. Where it's located currently is in preface text. So Krista, on the insert pages that went out, those preface text was also included in those, correct?
Yes. And keep in mind that the preface language isn't consistent throughout all the codes either. Each of the codes has specific things that apply to that code and not to other codes, so.
Right,
Well,
that's
Go
why I
ahead.
agree that this, to be honest, to make it simple, this doesn't need to be done. Code change, this, whatever, 4.4.3.2. I don't know if we can make just because it's a combined meeting, we don't do that. I don't know.
All right. Well, I mean, I think, the reason bringing it here, I don't think there was any issue necessarily making this change in this specific section, other than it might trigger the need to do it across the entire code for the building code, and then also to do it across all the other codes as well. As far as trying to reduce confusion on it, I honestly haven't heard much issue coming out of the code users that, when they go through the code and it says energy conservation code, that they're saying, oh, well, I go to this book and not the Washington State Energy Code. I think that most of our code users are understanding that there is a Washington State Energy Code and it does replace that. I agree with Hoyt's point on if we put it in chapter 1, it could be amended out. Not that I think it would be a targeted section to be removed, but I guess there is the potential. And then Krista, if we did it in the reference standards section, the issue there is that not everybody's going to the reference standards first. And is there other issue that you see, Krista, if we did it in reference standards?
Well, if you did it in the reference standard, you'd actually have to go back and change every instance within the code. Otherwise, you have a broken link between the reference standards and the referenced sections that are there.
So the same issue that we have if we do it just within this section. So, I don't know, my particular preference would be to leave it in the preface sections that are kind of customized for each of the codes. But I would also like to hear from more folks. Roger?
Yeah, I pulled up the IFC and the Washington State Energy Code and the IBC. I think they all spell out, they call under the Energy Code, under authority, it says the Washington State Energy Code, which is italicized residential provisions. It says is adopted. I think it should be are adopted. But I feel like it should be in the preference sections, but I think as a part of the correlation, my recommendation would be that all of the codes be updated, the preface for all of the codes be updated to make sure that they are referencing it appropriately. And I would ask for confirmation from the Attorney General's office that we are legally properly referring to it. I recognize the preface might not be somebody could not adopt that, but I actually feel like there would be a pretty darn strong legal argument that the RCWs direct, the State Building Code Council to adopt, and it would be a pretty hard legal argument for somebody to say they wouldn't have to do that, or they, can use the International Energy Code. So I think it should be in the preface, and I think that we should say each of the codes should look at the proper wording in the introduction or in the preface and make sure that it's appropriately referenced.
Okay.
That's what I think.
So I can definitely run that up the legal tree to Dirk and get input on making sure we use the correct titles in relation to RCW and WAC, and then say recommend that we aren't recommending this proposal for approval, but the topic goes into the preface sections, and that we're going to touch those and make sure that WAC gets taken care of. Dave?
Yeah, I was looking through the energy code because I don't do that very often. It's interesting, the RCW actually, RCW 1927A025 says that the state energy code is the 1986 edition as amended. So we may want to, that's definitely some black language we need to get some updates on.
You said 025?
025. The second line there.
Yeah. So Krista, what's your opinion on referencing the 1986 edition of the Energy Code?
That's always been there, and it says the next line is you can amend it to increase the requirements, and then the further, and 160 has all the by 2031 it shall be 70% improved over the 1986 edition. So I mean, it's all,
I think 70% is on the 2006.
2006, sorry, yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, this is almost getting into Initiative 2066 language and what applies, and so I'm not sure we want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
wasn't planning on that.
something
It just that's an oddity to me when I looked at the code, comparing it to the other codes, because the energy code does have its own RCW, so it's a totally separate RCW. It's been handled. There's still language in there talking about the in 020, for instance, it talks about that we still have to consider the International Energy Conservation Code in place of the state energy existing code. So there's stuff that's outdated on this. It's just, trying to work it through is kind of challenging.
Right. Alrighty. So does this group want to put a blessing on maintaining proper titles as identified by Dirk within the preface sections of the code? I guess all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anybody opposed to that movement? All right, so on 124, we're gonna recommend not adoption. Quinn, go ahead.
I know I'm going to speak out of my other end here, but looking at this, if you look at number 1 and number 2, no, go back to that
Right.
020. It does say, and it is an RCW, it does say we shall recognize it as Washington State Energy Code to be known as. So legally, I think this answers my question.
I think that I think my question comes down to is the should we call it the Washington State Building Code, Washington State Fire Code, etc., like what's on the
Yeah, I get that, but
Yeah.
I think, I don't think those have an RCW that specifies specifically like this one did.
They don't. I just the titles here that
Yeah.
is different. So I'll get with Dirk and ask him about the titles. I think the energy code one is pretty clear. It's the Washington State Energy Code. It's these other ones that are a little bit different. And I'll get with Dirk and ask him on that one. And then we'll maintain it in the preface section.
Okay.
At least that'll be the recommendation that we'll take back to the main groups. All right. Does that work for everybody?
Jeff's back and I sent you an email.
Gotcha. Let's see. See that one. So we're gonna bop back to 091. Jeff has sent me an email with some updates here. Roger, you have your hand up?
Dustin, I'm gonna have to leave at 10:30, so I think you can introduce the one or two IBC sections. I sent you an email with the numbers. I think they're 89 and 90. If you want to get input on the mass timber podium question.
Can we maybe run to that one real quick before you run, Roger, and then we'll come back to 91?
Sure.
So I have 089 pulled up here. And then Roger, looking at your email.
I think 090 is related as well, and I will preface it by I wasn't really aware and hadn't spent a whole lot of time up until this last meeting working through it, and actually where we are at right now, that document that is shown on the screen. Oh, Todd's here. Let Todd handle it. He knows a lot more than I do.
Thank you. Do you want me to introduce this a little bit for everyone?
Yes, please. And just
Okay.
preface on the one on the left, we're working to get that one on the proper proposal form. So it's just code language on the one on the left. So if just to address that question.
Yeah, and maybe address the first question there. They are two separate proposals. They're not connected, except that they both deal with the same section here. We're looking at 89 or 90. I can't remember here.
On the left is 89 and on the
Okay.
right is 90.
Okay, 90 is separate as a simple occupancy question that Joe put in, Joe Mayo, asking the question of whether or not occupancy E should be allowed in 510.2. So set that one aside for a second here if you want to talk about 89 on the left. This one is much bigger. This one is, and I jump. I'm collaborating with Joe on this. He submitted it originally, and the first question was simply, what if Type 4A was allowed? That's how the original proposal was. The petition was written. Then got some feedback. Went back and worked it with a bunch of stakeholders. This is the first time we're probably bringing it to fire considerations. And last Friday we introduced it to the broader IBC group to kind of really engage on the building official side. Where this is landing right now is a question of yes, if this were to get developed and go through, what would it mean to go from the podium being a 1A non-combustible to a Type 4A, Type 4B, or Type 4C? So what is it that would allow consideration for that? Is it area? Is it occupancy? And so this is starting to get a little more, a little tighter now, trying to deal with those considerations. Also bringing the occupancy above only to R1 and R2. I think the intention is this is a pretty specific, building typology that's looking for residential above and not looking for unlimited area below. So it might even mean that, if it's timber, if the horizontal separation is timber, it's going to have to be pretty rational design anyway. We're not going to do a lot of big transfer loads and things like that through in plane of the diaphragm, or have a lot of offset lateral system and gravity system below. So that's what this is trying to nuance. It's pulling some code from, as you'll recognize, existing Seattle from multiple places. One from looking at a little bit from the Type 3A, the 6-story, but this isn't trying to get specifically. I'm just trying to find common language there of things that have been considered. The second one is the Seattle single exit, which it also then pulls from some of the language from the new. But really, what we're saying is, obviously there should be sprinklers everywhere in this, if considered, in my opinion. Should it require pressurization just outright? And then in terms of the areas, is the type 4 area, the type 4B area, type 4C area, is that enough? And then if so, should it give any other bonuses, for frontage or so forth, or should that also be dialed back? So I'm going to stop there just because there's a lot more discussion. I just wanted to try to introduce the one piece I didn't mention was obviously this is trying to go to 70 feet with the type 5A. It limits it just to type 5A above, type 3A, or technically you could do type 4 HT over the bottom, which would be 4A, 4B, or 4C. It is saying if we were to propose this, should that bottom then stay 3 hour? That's not really contemplated a lot in mass timber, but there is precedent. Some of the Milwaukee buildings that are doing type 1A towers have gone alternative materials design and methods and done a little bit of testing at the Forest Products Lab to do 3 hour columns. And so although it sounds not cost effective for big, we're seeing a lot of 32-inch, 36-inch columns. And so we are kind of moving this direction. So, okay, I'll stop there, but happy to engage anyone.
Roger.
Yeah, I will just say before I jump, from a structural perspective on the building code tag, we were all, after discussing it, comfortable with it. Yes, there are diaphragm loads, and I do support it. I think mass timber is certainly it is a new system. I think there are lots of places that it could be utilized, and I think from a structural perspective, it can work. I think and also, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, I think on the architectural side, there was a fair amount of support for it, although I think you needed to clean up the alternate on 4, 5, and 6 there. And so that's what Joe's going to work on. So I think on the structural and the structural, we were okay with. The architecture, mostly okay with a few tweaks, but I think it was commenting on fire needing to have that input. So with that, I'm going to log off.
Thank you, Roger. Hoyt.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say I'm in support of this too. The only thing I really wanted was kind of get the fire tag input on this too, see what they thought. Past history has shown these has worked fine. It's a full 13 system that has to be sprinkled. I'm in support of this. Because you could do it if you're building right on ground too. So you still have that 75 feet. The only thing on there, you remember we talked about, it's not a big deal, but the code is add occupied floor and occupied roofs. It's not a big deal, but that's kind of a new defined term that we weren't prepared for. I would say occupied floor or occupied roof for that 75 feet of number 5, but that could just be an editorial thing. So.
Gotcha. Quinn?
I also have to leave at 10:30, so I got to log off pretty soon. But as having a seat on the IFC tag, I'd support this as well.
And Core?
I support this as well from the fire tag plans.
Okay. Any other comments on this particular proposal?
The only thing, can we change that number 5 where it says occupied floors or occupied roof?
Wait, I think that's was a really good suggestion, and I think Joe did work on some language over the weekend, but I need to catch up with it. So I think he included that in there.
That's what I thought.
So thank you for that. Yeah.
Is that changing occupied to occupiable?
Yeah, and not to confuse people. I mean, we all. I think Joe already cleaned up, the 2 alternates. In put it in the proper format. We're just trying to figure out, get a pulse from others of which language we're moving towards, because if we look at the wobble language for the type for the single exit, is that kind of where we think this is going? And a lot of people from Seattle probably should weigh on that, how they would, if they would rewrite anything differently in their current considerations. So just kind of get these all to converge somewhere.
Yeah, this is Jeff Shapiro. I don't have any interest in this, but I'll weigh in since I have a lot of history in this section of the code. My personal feeling is it doesn't belong in 510.2. It ought to be a separate section that deals with this type of structure. I'm not even sure what it gains you because pedestal type construction has been neutered to the degree that it has in the later codes with regard to the allowance for 13R protection. A lot of the basis of doing pedestal construction was to get 13R instead of NFPA 13 sprinklers in the building above the pedestal. And that's so constrained at this point that you lose a lot of the benefit that was designed into the code when we originally put this in. So honestly, because of those limits, it gives me less concern about type 4A construction. I'm not sure about 4B and 4C being equated to type 1. Line 4 gives me heartburn. And I'll say, just for clarity, and even before I talk on the next item, I am a consultant to the National Fire Sprinkler Association, but I'm not speaking on their behalf, and I've not talked to them about any of this. But in item 4, you're saying all portions of the building above and below the horizontal assembly have to be NFPA 13. But that's an exception to number 2, which is the building below is type 1A construction. So why are you regulating the building above and below in a section that only deals with the building below? And moreover, why are you requiring NFPA 13 above the assembly? If you're going to equate mass timber to type 1A construction, then you shouldn't be impacting the portion of the building that has nothing to do with type 1A or mass timber construction. So I don't like the idea of an exception being longer than the section that it accepts. And I really think it needs to be done separately out of 510.2. That section has been in the code forever. It was designed for type 1 buildings. And if you want to do something for type 4, I think it should be a separate discussion. Don't worry, I'm not moving to Washington, but as long as I'm on your call, I can express an opinion.
Gotcha. So, Todd, with that kind of comment, do you see this as needing to maybe have a little bit of work before we bring it back to the building tag?
Yeah, no, and thank you, Jeff, for that feedback and everyone. Yeah, Joe's again leading this. He's the proponent, and I need to look at the next version that he just submitted this weekend, and we'll get that out and posted. Because we're meeting next Tuesday. Is that correct, Dustin?
That is, well, that's what I want to talk to you about as
Okay.
future meetings.
Okay, I think Joe's intent was to get it posted this week so people could percolate over the long break here.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I think our next solid scheduled meeting is next Thursday, which is hopefully the final one where we're vetting all of our proposals.
Okay. Yeah, and please, I'll open to all input here. So please email Dustin or copy me if interested, or Jen, Joe, of course. Thank you.
All righty. So with that one, I think we're wrapped on 089. Todd, do you think we need to go into 90 and talk about the educational?
I don't know a lot
occupancy?
about it. It was pretty straightforward, and I would probably defer to Joe on that one.
Yeah, I think Roger brought it up only because it deals with the same section here. And so any other comments on 089 that we could deliver back to its proponent? Nobody's unmuting, no hands are going up, so we'll wrap that one. And then we will get back into 091. Let me just clear the screen here. All right, so this is the document back from Jeff. Let me save this real quick. Okay.
Okay, so I'll just walk you through this. Although I thought this was going to be quick and easy, it was less so when I started digging into it. So the original text of 903.281 is for R3 occupancies. And I thought that I had that in here. If you if you change your review settings to view everything in line, that might show up at the top where it says review. And then, yeah, show markup. And then under balloons, everything in line. It's already checked. Okay, so sorry about that. The original 903.281 basically said that sprinkler systems and R3 occupancies can be in accordance with 313, which is 13D systems. To get rid of the issue of occupancy classification, 1 and 2 family dwellings are always going to be R3. Townhouses, again, we have this discussion of is it R2 or R3? Doesn't matter if I use the word townhouse. That's defined in the IBC as 3 or more dwelling units, and that's all we need. So for 1 and 2 family dwellings and 3 or more dwelling units, the sprinkler system can be installed in accordance with 313, which is 13D. That totally eliminates the discussion of what's the occupancy classification and uses the existing 903.281 rather than adding 2 more subsections. I honestly did not feel the need to pick up on 60 feet or the 4 stories because that's handled by the tables. So to me, this is sufficient. In the first table, I made sure to add the new footnote J, which I modified what he had to A and B construction because you don't want B to be more generous than A. And again, I got rid of the 1 dwelling unit, 2 dwelling units, or townhouse, and just called it 1 and 2 family dwellings, and townhouses that are group R can go to 60 feet if they're 5A or 5B. And the next table, as I said, I got rid of, and I'm just to make sure it's clear that that's stricken. The whole 13D line is stricken. And then footnote H, as it exists today, if you go to, I did what I could to highlight that, but it wouldn't do it. If you go to footnote H, it says new group R occupancies are protected in accordance with 903.28, and that is the 281 that I just amended that says 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses. So I don't even need to say anything under R2 because the existing footnote H that's there already points you to 903.28 and will say 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses can be done in accordance with 13D. I did the same change for the new footnote J, which is for number of stories. And again, I added that footnote J to 5A and 5B construction so that both of those can go to 4 stories, which is currently 13R. Yeah, let's see. Did I miss that under? Can you go back there again? I could have sworn I added that. Okay, my bad. It should be next to the other 3 for 5A construction.
Right here.
Yeah, I could have sworn I typed that, but I think I may have hit undo for something and it went 1 level too far. Yeah, because you don't want a 5A construction building to be more restrictive than 5B. So it lets both of those go to the 4 stories. And then I think I deleted the other one there at the beginning of the line. I think that's stricken on after 13D.
Yeah, it looks like it's got a strikeout through it.
Okay. Yeah. So I moved it to the 3 instead of putting it at the beginning of the line because it makes more sense at the 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The last thing I did is something that actually just came up a few days ago that I wasn't aware of, but there's a jurisdiction in Texas that was looking at doing exactly this, and they had elevators in the building, residential elevator. And if you read 713.4, a residential elevator in a dwelling unit is technically in a shaft, and that shaft enclosure at 4 stories is technically 2 hours. Why you got those, I don't know. I fixed those before I sent it, and they undid. Anyway, so I'm actually looking at, and I'm kind of in trouble in the IBC process because Chapter 7 was fire safety. It was in Group A, and I can't tinker with this. So I'm going to try to find a way probably to put it into the elevator chapter and then let the Code Correlation Committee move this in if they decide to. But you don't require enclosure of anything in 5B construction in a residential unit. And 5A is 1 hour, but it's 1 hour throughout. So I missed, sorry, it should be shafts in 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses of type 5B construction. I don't know, I must have sent you a different, one of the versions that I was working on, but it should say townhouses of type 5B construction shall not be required to have, because 5A is going to be 1 hour throughout. I mean, I would, frankly, 5A, I would do it 1 hour throughout anyway, because that's the general requirement, and this wouldn't get rid of that. But if you wanted to add 5B for clarity, I just don't think it makes any sense to rate a residential elevator shaft when it's right next to what could be an open stairway for the full height of the building. So this is a little bit different than what I'm going to probably have to do in, you should say, type 5B, and it's a Roman numeral 5. And as I said, I don't know that that's 100% necessary if people think it's implied, because 5B is 1 hour throughout. That works for me. But I'll have to deal with this probably in the elevator chapter for the 27 code, because Chapter 7 is already closed. But for you guys, if you want this, it just makes sense to me, because 4-story townhouses sometimes do end up with a residential elevator, and it just makes no sense to me in a 5B building, especially because you could put it in an IRC building with no protection to require something more restrictive under the IBC. There may be other little things that I come across as I work through the additional story piece, but this is the one that popped up the other day. So Ken wouldn't even have been aware of this. This literally is, since the last time I talked with him, this came to my attention.
All right.
Jeff, Sean, we're aware of it in Seattle. It's caused problems.
Okay, so this solves your problem, I hope.
I think it'll be a great help. Whether it solves everybody else's problems that are around the table, not too sure.
All right. Any other comments on this revision to the proposal?
The only other thing I wanted to put on the table, just for point of discussion, this is a big give to the home building industry. When we put the townhouse sprinkler requirement in at the state level, we did it at more than 4 units. I know Seattle has amended that out. I would just like to say, for the construction industry, giving so much here to allow 4-story type 5B buildings, and especially with no shafts inside, I would love to see a path to getting that 4-story threshold out of the state code. I'm sorry, the 4-unit threshold, so that all townhouses in the state are required to be sprinklered. I'd like this to be perhaps the honeypot that maybe gets the building industry on board with that. I at least want it on the table for people to be aware that usually we try to do give and take in the code. And I think when you give the home building industry this much, it would really be nice to see that 4-unit threshold in Washington go away. You know, I think you've got really good experience, especially in Seattle, getting these things done in a cost-effective manner, especially with the reduction of the fire separation wall that's allowed in the code. So I just want that on the table as a point of discussion. I understand that it may be too late to do that, or that people may not be in support of it, but I would be remiss if I don't bring it up.
Gotcha. Any other comments or questions for Jeff?
Is it, I just, this is Hoyt, Jeff, questions. So this pretty much tells me, and with the exceptions, you're basically, getting in where most people live in 1 or 2 family dwelling house and townhouses. You're not gonna have any rating for the shafts that go these multiple stories up. At all. If they put an elevator in there, let's just say hypothetically, for XYZ reasons. You wouldn't have to protect any of, I guess. It's a weird change, number 2.
So the short answer, Hoyt, is yes. And I'll just point you, if you're looking at the IRC, you can do 3 stories plus a habitable attic and not have any rating of any of the shafts inside the buildings. So the question is, why would the IBC need to be more restrictive on that? I mean, technically, yes, you're getting a full story as opposed to a habitable attic, which for all intents and purposes at this point is a story. But right now we have no enclosure requirements up to 3 stories. What is the marginal change when you get to 4 in a building that's fully sprinklered? And I don't personally think if you can do this under the IRC that there's a basis for the IBC to be more restrictive. Moreover, under the IBC, you can have a 4-story open stairway going all the way up wrapped around this elevator shaft. And you can have 4 stories worth of open penetration through the building with no fire rating. Why? Simply because they might choose to put a shaft enclosure around something. Do you now require it to be rated? There's no atrium requirement for a single family dwelling. We build these this way all the time. So the fact that you're choosing to enclose something, to me, shouldn't trigger a requirement that you've now got to have a rated shaft and rated elevator doors. I mean, imagine what's going to happen when you've got to put rated elevator doors in a residential occupancy. You're making an elevator in a 4-story townhouse cost prohibitive. And I honestly don't think that benefits anybody. So that's my 2 cents. I'm really just looking at it from the standpoint of relativity to the IRC and what the code already allows with regard to openness within a townhouse unit or a dwelling unit from the floor to the roof.
About accessibility.
Not even on my radar. So you can choose to leave that out or put it in. I think it's helpful to go ahead and put it in at this point. You have another review after this. At least if people see this, they can look at it and it can be discussed. If it goes forward without this, it's kind of off the table, and then you're going to be stuck with the potential that you can't introduce this going forward. And back to what Seattle is experiencing. I love the fact that Seattle has opened the sprinkler requirement to all townhouses, and I want to give the builders something back in return.
One thing I just want to bring, Seattle, their fire department is a lot more the response times, whatever, throughout the whole state. This will be used throughout the whole state. Do we have the same? I mean, Seattle has their own building code, which is separate from the whole state code. And I got to get my head wrapped around it. We're not making a decision now, are we, Dustin, on this?
The decision we're making today is to say that, if this goes back and is in both the building code and the fire code, that we're happy with the language across both of them. Prior to this one going back to the fire tag, I'd also be sending it off to Ken for a blessing. Russell.
Yeah, I like the changes that were made at the table and Jeff's rationale for the shaft exception, that if it's allowed in the IRC, makes sense to add that here. So I am in support of the changes, even though I don't get a vote.
And as another topic on this one, so Jeff, you touched on the bucket test and the calculations. If I'm recalling what you were saying earlier, is that the requirements for the bucket test or calculations are contained elsewhere in the code, and so it doesn't do us any favors to add them into the language proposal here?
Dustin, this is Sean Shepard. I'll speak first.
Go ahead.
The allowance for the bucket test is not found in the code or standard. It is actually found in the licensing rules for fire sprinkler contractors.
And that's they're like the Department of Labor and Industries or the Washington State Patrol.
It's Washington State Fire Marshal's office underneath the State Patrol.
Okay.
That's where it's always been found. It's never been located in a standard. It's never been located in the code.
Okay. Lance?
I would agree with moving this forward. I think this language clears up some of the issues I had. I would let Dave jump back in, but I think it might fix a few of the things Cocott was talking about. And I was just going to echo what Sean brought up, was that we've adopted the bucket test as part of these systems in Spokane as part of the licensing structure from the State Fire Marshal's office.
Okay. And so is it safe to say then that adding that language into this proposal doesn't gain us anything that's not already there?
In some ways, it would point it out a little clearer to the AHJs that they could require the bucket test, but I think if they're familiar with the state licensing system and schedule, that it's a requirement under the licensing if the AHJ wants to pursue it that way.
Okay. All right. Anything further on this particular proposal? Then all those in favor of sending this back to the individual tags, please say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Anybody in opposition of that particular momentum?
I was in support. I just had to unmute myself, so I was an aye. So Casey came in afterwards. So this is Hoyt.
Gotcha. Hoyt is an aye. All right, with that one going back, I believe that's all that we have on the table for today. And anybody have any other comments or questions for the good of the order? Seeing no hands and nobody speaking up, I will call this meeting adjourned.
All right. Thanks, Dustin.
Thanks everybody for your time today. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Say, Jeff, thank you very much for attending.
Yes, Jeff, much appreciated.
I
thank you,
appreciate
Jeff.
the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
You're welcome.